Hello and welcome to Finding Your Holy Grail, a show produced through Passionate World Talk Radio, whose goal is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. We would like to thank Jeannie White, station manager, and Lillian Caldwell, CEO. I am your host, Dr. Mandy Simon, and I am joined by my co-creator, Dr. Gordon MacMillan. Welcome, Dr. MacMillan.
Thank you, Mandy. I'm very happy to join our listeners in celebrating the final day of 2020. Congratulations, everyone, for making it through a challenging year. Here's hoping the year ahead brings happiness and good fortune.
I'm so grateful we made it through this year. And for everyone listening, definitely take a moment, do a happy dance, kiss the ground, scream loudly with your head turned to the sky, whatever strikes your fancy, but definitely express it. Every single one of us has an important purpose on this planet, and 2020 has given us the laser focus to know in what areas of our lives that we are truly blessed. It has also given us the stark reality to see where our lives are not working. No matter what 2020 brought for you, each of us is 100% more clear on what is important to us. This is something to be excited about, even if you don't know where to start.
You're quite right, Mandy. It's great to be stepping into 2021. And more than this, we're kicking off the last day of the year by providing practical guidance to our audience in terms of building skills to be more resilient so we can live fearless in this post-pandemic world. In fact, our focus throughout the month of January is setting goals which we can achieve.
Yeah, setting goals like New Year's resolutions is all about defining that life that we wish for ourselves and turning our dreams and aspirations into reality. It is a skill which most of us find really challenging, but our listeners might be surprised to learn that it has everything to do with fear, resilience, belief systems, and awareness of our blind spots. The truth is, we can't effectively manifest the life we desire if we don't understand the intersection between these emotions and perspectives. And in the coming weeks, we're going to explore each of them in turn. And this week, we're going to focus on fear.
It's an important topic. Defining priorities, setting milestones, and realizing our goals actually allows us to move forward in our lives according to an agenda which is set by us alone and not by anybody else. And this is particularly significant right now as we embark upon a new year which is characterized by great uncertainty. Many people are unsure what 2021 has in store for them. They fear for their health, their jobs, and their loved ones. Setting and achieving our goals is such an important way for us to maintain control over our lives in this context. And believe it or not, it provides great reassurance in times of uncertainty.
Yeah, you're quite right to recognize the importance of setting our own agenda in life. Every day, we're obligated to respond to the agendas of others, whether it's the demands of a boss at work, the needs of children at home, or the requirements of friends and neighbors within our community. And this context of everyday living, it's really empowering to define and work toward our own goals. It actually allows us to fulfill our own personal needs and not just serve the needs of others. But more than this, when we serve others, we can more easily and joyfully serve ourselves. So goal setting is really important, and making sure that we achieve the goals that we set is the most important point. Notice I did not simply say setting goals, but rather setting goals we can achieve.
Well, that all sounds great in principle, but in practice, I've never had much success in achieving my goals in life. Every January, I'm really good at setting out my intentions for the year ahead, and I'm so diligent about producing a list of things that I want to achieve. But The reality is they soon get overtaken by the practicalities of life, and most of them remain undone by the time I get to the end of December.
I'm glad you brought this up. And the truth is, you're not alone. It's so much easier to set your goals than it is to achieve them. And many people experience the same frustrations that you have. Fortunately, I think I can help you because I have given this subject a lot of thought. I've researched the most effective strategies for setting and achieving goals. And this is valuable information because when we master this process, we're able to move beyond simply surviving on the treadmill of life to actually thriving and growing and realizing our dreams. And from my perspective, successful goal setting is all about understanding our own individual fears, beliefs, blind spots, and our ability to have resilience. It's also a pretty pesky situation in our lives when our friends can clearly see issues or problems, but we don't have a clue about them.
Sadly, yes, I know exactly what you mean by that.
Well, in periods of certainty as well as uncertainty, like the present, before setting goals that we can achieve, we have to understand our perception of fear, our skills of resilience, our own belief systems, and have at least some awareness of our blind spots. To the extent that we understand how these aspects drive the way that we make decisions in life, will determine the extent to which we're able to realize our goals and aspirations, whatever they might be.
Whoa, I've never thought of it like that. For me, the focus has always been on setting the goals themselves, prioritizing, and being practical about my objectives for the year ahead. But I've never thought through the mechanics of ensuring they become a reality.
Yeah, I also used to think the same way. And until I started to unpack why it was that I never seemed to be able to realize my own goals in life, even when I identified very simple, clear objectives for the year ahead, and they seemed entirely straightforward to me, I seldom achieved them. And I came to realize that I was approaching the whole exercise from the wrong perspective. I actually allowed uncertainty and fear to completely undermine my efforts. I invite you to listen carefully because I'm about to explain the key to manifesting the future you wish for yourself.
Well, hang on a minute. Just let me see if I understand you right. Fear and uncertainty affect our ability to achieve our goals.
Absolutely. And honestly, I figured this out through all of my years of taking care of patients at the bedside. I'm really grateful to them for helping me figure this one out. So, as we unpack this topic of fear for the week, I will focus on the science and the practical application of how fear manifests in our lives and what are the driving forces. Remember, during January, we're on a journey together to make sure that by the end of the month, we can take everything we've learned together and refer back to the goals that each of us set on January 1st, 2021. Based on the goals that we set on January 1st, and then using the knowledge that we acquired during this month, all of our listeners will be in a great situation to determine if the goals they set can actually be achieved this year. That means we're going to cover each week a new theme, and then at the end of the month, each of us will reevaluate our goals and modify them in whatever ways are necessary.
Fantastic. So, if I have this right, we are starting this week with the theme of fear. Then we're going to move on to resilience, belief systems, and finally, blind spots.
Yeah, you got it. And one last thing, when we teach you blind spots, we're going to do a demonstration about how to confirm through your physical body that your thoughts are telling you the truth. But I'm getting ahead of our agenda. For now, let's get started talking about fear.
Yes, let's dive into the science of fear and the practical application of how it manifests in our lives and what are the driving forces.
Yeah. And to do this, we have to first look at fear with the objective eyes of a clinician. Fear is a powerful emotion, and it activates and motivates both the mind and our physical body, and it makes us behave in certain ways. Fear is experienced when we perceive that we are threatened. All of us can feel fear, but none of us can directly focus fear onto another person. This is because fear is transmitted by a stimulus. It's such an important point, as the brain needs to decide if an outside stimulus from our environment or an internal stimulus from our thoughts creates the emotional feeling of fear in the person being affected. Fear is such a powerful emotion that it creates mental and physical barriers to individuals being able to function in effective ways. So, for example, and we talked about this in our very first show, there is the well-known flight or fight phenomenon. And this is the theory that if an animal is in physical danger, a chemical cascade takes place in the body that automatically alerts the affected animal to making a subconscious decision to react. The subconscious decision to react is not managed by the part of the brain that produces logical thought. And the animal's body automatically switches into the flight response. In fact, in the theory of evolution, this is how humans came to evolve over time, and this innate ability to survive in dangerous circumstances has in part led to the success of the human species in our modern world. The conscious thought that we humans employ in a stressful but not life-threatening situation, for example, our boss being really unhappy with our job performance, is something where the higher centers of our brain allow us to make decisions about the type of fight response that we're going to engage in to defend our position. The important point to understand here is that the outside stressors that we experience can elicit either a conscious, so our chosen action, or subconscious, a survival reaction in response to the situation at hand. Because fear is one of the most powerful emotions carrying a negative connotation, we must possess a very high level of awareness of our own capabilities to successfully manage the multitude of negative responses that can occur. In fact, if the stress is too severe and we're unable to manage it, our actions and reactions can cause our mind and our body to decompensate. In extreme circumstances, this can lead to mental illness in the forms of anxiety, phobias, post-traumatic stress syndromes, agoraphobia, which means fear to even leave your house. And at first, these types of things manifest simply when we find ourselves becoming less social because we don't feel safe in the outside environment, and the isolation creeps in until we feel alone and we ultimately become depressed. This is actually why we spent the entire show on December 17th talking about our need for safety. When we don't feel safe, it creates a fear response in our bodies. Sometimes we recognize this feeling, and other times we use coping mechanisms to deal with it.
Sure, I know this one because I've certainly been there. Mandy, what you're saying really resonates with me. We all have different ways of managing stress. And in my case, it usually involves drinking too much and overeating.
Well, you're certainly not alone. We all have our own coping mechanisms, and they are seldom healthy. The problem is, as you adopt coping behaviors, you actually shift from living a healthful life to functioning in a constant state of stress. And the repetitive stress acts negatively on the body to create worsened states of physical health, mental health, and life filled with patterns of behavior we absolutely would never freely choose for ourselves. For example, let's take alcohol. When people drink too much, there's a reason for it. It's always a reason that has a tangible element, so something we can see, and an intangible motivator, something that is unseen. In this case, the seen or the tangible reason is usually verbally stated, something to the effect of, I need a beer. It's been such a rough day. And for some people, that beer turns into 10 beers, or it can come in the form of drinking every night after work. So when the person has passed the point of having the first or second beer, which would simply be taking the edge off for the day, or they've entered into the habit of drinking every night to take the edge off, they have now wandered into the unseen motivators for their reasons to continue drinking.
So, are you telling me that the habits we have in life can be driven by stressors, as in our bodies and minds perceive threats in our lives, and our behaviors are a mirror of these same stressors?
Yes, and this can be a really difficult concept to grasp, but let's try. Let's look at this very broadly. When we consume food or drink or we shop to excess, there is a fear that exists in us that's driving our behavior to act. And this driving force is usually unknown to us. Instead, we choose to look at the situation and say, man, I really needed to have that drunken night, or that retail therapy was just what the doctor ordered. But in truth, when we find ourselves in these situations, we actually feel worse about ourselves. And this is because there is this unseen force that's driving our behavior. The practical reality of why we don't meet our goals that we set for ourselves is always wrapped up in the unseen force driving our behaviors. And believe it or not, it is because we are motivated by fear. Let me give you another example. A common New Year's resolution is to give up our favorite food.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you saying we're unsuccessful at giving up our favorite foods because we're acting out of fear?
Well, actually, what I'm saying is that somewhere in our subconscious mind, there is an emotion that's tied to why we have a favorite food. And it is that emotion that will create a healthy or an unhealthy response in our life, depending on what we are trying to get to. For example, let's say someone has the New Year's resolution to give up chocolate, and they want to give it up because they eat too much of it.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's definitely a common one. I can relate to that one.
If you are a person that has a memory of eating chocolate as a young child and it reminds you of happy times with family, or for example, you love your mom's chocolate cake and grew up to love everything chocolate, this will apply to you. So if we briefly look at this situation, we realize the emotions of love, joy, happiness, etc., are associated with chocolate. In fact, we could even say that safety is a feeling wrapped up in the person's love of chocolate because they love their mother's chocolate cake. It may seem far-fetched to some, especially to our listeners at home, but a mother's love is a powerful safety net. And in this particular instance, the person vowing to give up chocolate as their New Year's resolution is likely to fail in their goal to stop eating chocolate this year. The worst part of this situation is that if they give up chocolate, in some way, they are likely to have sadness or remorse associated with giving up chocolate. So achieving their stated goal will likely not bring them happiness. This will, of course, depend on the person, but this example is valuable because what is for certain is that if a person equates eating chocolate with the positive emotions of love, joy, safety, etc., and they give up the chocolate, the odds of them actually feeling happy or being able to sustain giving up the chocolate in their lives is almost zero.
Wow, this is such an amazing insight. Tell me more.
I completely agree, Gordon. And really, it was through my work taking care of patients and talking to them about being compliant with their medications and diet that I learned this. I've worked with lots, thousands of patients, but also with private clients on goal setting. And the truth is that when you set goals that you do not create a stress response in the body, you will then actually achieve those goals. And when you set goals that create a stress response in the body, you need the help of a professional to get you through the minefield of emotions and provide you with objective viewpoints to support you through those times. The secret to setting goals you can achieve is to successfully identify the repeating patterns in your life and figure out where you are triggered by stress. That is the first step in being able to realize the beautiful, amazing world that you want to manifest through setting your goals for a better life. I actually think that's enough for now. Next week, we will take a further dive as we discuss the concept of resilience. Resilience helps a person to either positively or negatively manage their stress response.
Well, Mandy, thank you for that comprehensive analysis of fear. I'm sure that, like me, our listeners now have a thorough understanding of how we process stress differently. But I don't quite understand how all of this is related to goal setting. And I'm sure our listeners would like to know a little more before we sign off.
Sure. Let me take you back to the beginning of our discussion today. It's actually pretty easy to define goals for the coming year. And I suspect that for many of our listeners, greater success, abundance, happiness, love, and security might all feature in your aspirations for 2021. The tricky bit is how we make our dreams come true, so that in 12 months' time, we can look back from a position of contentment as we experience the satisfaction of a job well done. The truth is that it's been typically difficult to manifest the future that we desire for ourselves. But it really doesn't have to be this way. If we understand our own perceptions of fear, our levels of resilience, our own belief systems, and we have a greater awareness of how to identify our blind spots, we can achieve every goal we set for our lives.
Yes, I can see this, and I'm actually getting quite excited for setting my goals this year. When do I start?
Well, I would encourage everyone on January 1st to write down and set their goals for the year of 2021, realizing it's completely fine to set them exactly as you have in the past. And make one of your promises to join us on this journey in January to learn how to identify any areas you need to make modifications to your goal setting by doing the homework every week. Then at the end of January, after we go through each of these topics, we will compare the goals that each of us set on January 1st and make sure, based on what we've learned, that our goals can be achieved.
This is exciting. Yes, I'm going to write down my goals on January the 1st, just like all those years beforehand. But I'm also going to do this week's homework so that I can be ready at the end of the month to modify any of my New Year's resolutions in order to achieve them.
Yeah, so this week's challenge for each of you at home is first to write down all the repeating patterns in your life. For example, are you constantly late for meetings? Do you still have tons of debt that you can't seem to get rid of? Do all of your romantic relationships end in the same way? Whatever it is for you, write it down. The second point is to write down what is the cost that these repeating patterns have in your life, personally and professionally. And the third one is so important. You need to first write down at least 3 fears that you are aware of. And then you need to write down at least 3 fears you were never aware of having. But you can realize now from doing these exercises and listening to this show. For example, you never realized that giving up eating chocolate was subconsciously linked to the love and safety of eating your mother's chocolate cake as a child. And now you eat lots of chocolate because this subconsciously makes you feel safe and loved. Remember, this information is just for you. Learning these things about yourself will help you not only write down and set goals you can actually achieve, but ultimately create the life of your dreams. regardless of the level of uncertainty in the world. Understanding how fear affects your life and how it manifests and recognizing what it is costing you is how you put yourself back in firm control of you.
And we want to thank Passionate World Talk Radio for providing a platform on their internet radio station for this show, Finding Your Holy Grail. For more information, go to www.passionateworldtalkradio.com. To subscribe to our community, go to www.findingyourholygrail.com and write to us at findingyourholygrail@gmail.com.
I'd like to thank all of our listeners this week who joined in. And until next week, keep well and stay brave and really dive in and give yourself the gift of learning how to conquer your own fears.